info from the NCA.
No problem.
Right, I'm arresting you on suspicion between November 2016 and October 2017, conspiring to import and supply Class A and B controlled drugs, conspiring to import and supply firearms and ammunition, money laundering.
A quiet morning in the English Midlands is suddenly shattered by the sound of helicopters circling overhead, armored vehicles blocking the driveway to a multi-million-euro mansion. There are no gunshots, no screams, but the air is thick, as if something very serious is going on. Residents only have time to see silhouettes in bulletproof vests enter, carrying search warrants and empty suitcases. The mansion, which looks like any other upper-class home, turns out to be a chillingly sophisticated underground operation. Doors open, and what's inside isn't just cash, diamonds, or guns, but the clue to a decades-long international criminal empire. So what makes this place the hub for a global smuggling network? Who's really behind the heavily guarded iron gates? And how will the police break the deadly silence? Watch till the end, and don't forget to leave a comment if you think justice really prevailed this time. Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh, a name that sounds like the nickname of a heavyweight boxer, has actually been a persistent obsession of the British police for more than a decade. With a calm appearance, always appearing in elegant suits and expensive supercars, few people would have guessed that behind the image of that businessman is the cold-blooded leader of one of the most dangerous transnational criminal organizations in Europe, the Kinahan gang. Instead of hiding in crowded cities, Kavanagh chose Tamworth, a peaceful town in the Midlands, as his base, but it was not sloppy at all. His villa was no different from a modern-day fortress, with multi-layered reinforced iron gates, a 360-degree camera system covering every corner, an armored car always ready to start, and a secret room filled with weapons, fake documents, and state-of-the-art encrypted communication devices. No one in the neighborhood knew exactly what he did for a living, only that there were always big trucks coming and going at night, and the area had more security than a bank. To the criminal world, Kavanagh was the kingpin of Kinahan's operations in Britain, importing large quantities of drugs, controlling territory, and silently dealing with traders. He didn't have to do anything, just a nod of the head could wipe out a life. And it was that invisibility that made Thomas Kavanagh more terrifying than any gun. In the early 2000s, Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh began laying the foundations of his underground empire. Not with money, but with cocaine and cannabis. He was not a street dealer, but a key intermediary between his South American contacts, especially Colombia, and a distribution network stretching across Europe and the UK. Without ever physically showing up at the delivery points or getting his hands dirty, Kavanagh ran the entire supply chain like a commander-in-chief, cold, precise, and ruthless. Shipments disguised as consumer goods, cars, or building materials traveled thousands of miles from seaports to secure transit points before being distributed to retailers in major cities. Behind the glamour were bloody purges. Anyone suspected of betraying, tipping off the police, or demanding a bigger cut quickly disappeared. No bodies, no confessions. Kavanagh became untouchable, not just because of his money and power, but because he knew how to keep his hands clean, using others as shields while building the perfect cover as a successful businessman. But the most dangerous thing? He began to believe that he was untouchable, and it was that arrogance that led to the irreversible mistake. A small package, but enough to start the 20-year empire he had built. In January 2019, Heathrow Airport, which handles thousands of international packages every day, suddenly became the starting point for one of the UK's biggest criminal investigations in a decade. When security forces spotted a shipment from the Netherlands that looked unusual, they decided to take a closer look. In a container that appeared to contain only consumer electronics, they discovered 23 kilograms of compressed cocaine, disguised in aluminum casing and vacuum sealed in layers of plastic. But the bigger shock came when they opened the second container. Inside were 3 disassembled semi-automatic guns, along with hundreds of rounds of ammunition, all sealed in moisture-proof plastic and hidden in fake machine parts. This was no longer a single drug bust. It was the clear sign of an organized arms smuggling network. The investigation quickly expanded. Using the shipment barcode, the recipient's address, and the warehouse cameras, the police traced the case to an affluent area of Tamworth Midlands, where Thomas Kavanagh's mansion was hidden behind a fence in dense greenery. The task force did not act hastily. They kept watch for weeks, collecting camera footage, listening to encrypted conversations, and reconstructing the entire shipment chain. With enough evidence, the raid was carried out in the early hours of the morning, while Kavanagh was still asleep. Inside the mansion, the police discovered nearly £36,000 in cash hidden in secret compartments, a series of electronic encryption devices, and most notably, a notebook, with no names or addresses, but filled with symbols, numbers, times, and shipping codes. That notebook would later become the map of operations for the entire smuggling network Kavanagh was coordinating. The shipments were coded with characters, with routes, weights, and expected delivery times. Many of the shipments matched previous drug shipments in Spain and Ireland, suggesting that Kavanagh was not just a cog in the chain, but a key coordination hub for the Kinahan gang across the UK. Police continued to search the warehouse in a small industrial area not far from the villa. Here, they found more industrial drug packaging equipment, bulletproof vests, a van with a modified floor to hide the goods, and transport contracts that showed signs of forgery. These clues, pieced together like a puzzle, suddenly created a clear picture of the underground empire that Kavanagh operated. Meanwhile, Kavanagh appeared unusually calm when arrested. He denied all charges, claiming he was a victim of mistaken identity and that the villa was simply a vacation home for a successful businessman. But no one believed him, especially when dozens of encrypted messages extracted from seized devices showed that the bomber had approved all decisions about cargo, routes, and even orders to deal with any traitors. The arrest immediately sent shockwaves through the criminal world, causing other small groups to go into hibernation or flee the UK. For the police, this was not simply a victory in a case. It was a rare moment when they brought an outlawed ghost coordinator into the light. But what they discovered was just the tip of the iceberg, because behind Kavanagh was a network whose roots had been deeply embedded in the European smuggling system for more than 20 years. The operation, codenamed Operation Escalade, was launched quietly but decisively after the raid on Thomas Kavanagh's mansion. It was not just a single arrest, it was the start of a 2-year international manhunt involving the UK's National Crime Agency, NCA, Europol and security agencies in Ireland, Spain, and the Netherlands. Using evidence seized at the scene, notebooks, encrypted phones, shipping contracts, investigators began to trace back a network that had been operating in secret for more than a decade. The key to unlocking the door was the encrypted messaging system encrypted, a platform widely used by criminals for its near-absolute security. However, in 2020, French and Dutch cybersecurity experts broke into the system, decoding hundreds of thousands of messages. The seemingly meaningless conversations, filled with symbols, nicknames, and symbols, gradually revealed the truth. Among them, Bomber was mentioned as the final decision-maker. Approving the quantity of goods, determining the route, directing the handling of problems. No one used his real name directly, but the time, place, and context were exactly the same as what was happening in the real world. A network began to emerge, each layer peeled back, each link exposed. Using data from EncroChat, the police traced the huge drug trafficking routes, from the port of Rotterdam, Netherlands, to Bilbao, Spain, then by land into France, across the border to England, in fake containers or trucks. At each stop, Kavanagh's henchmen supervised, coordinated, and reported directly in encryption. Photos of the waybills, driver information, and delivery schedules matched the decoded messages, turning the loose pieces of the puzzle into irrefutable evidence. At the same time, a hidden financial system was gradually revealed, a series of bank accounts registered under fake identities, cryptocurrency transactions laundered through casinos in Spain or shell companies in Ireland, all leading to the same coordination center, Kavanagh's villa. Operation Escalade did not stop at tracking goods and money. They also penetrated the gangs themselves. Some arrested members became witnesses, exchanging freedom for confessions. Through this, the police discovered many more branches of Kavanagh's network, from Hells Angels groups in Europe to people smugglers on the UK-Irish border. As a result, more than 50 locations in 5 countries were searched simultaneously over 18 months. More than 200 kilograms of drugs, hundreds of thousands of pounds in cash and weapons seized. To investigators, Kavanagh was more than just a smuggler. He was the architect of a machine, with links stretching from Medellin to Manchester, from Dubai to Dublin. And that machine would have been running smoothly if it hadn't been for a seemingly innocuous mistake, a shipment that failed to make it through the border. But that was the first domino, causing his 20-year empire to collapse piece by piece. In the dark, Kavanagh thought he was untouchable. But when the light of the law shines, no kingpin stays in the shade forever. The network that Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh orchestrated was not a typical criminal organization. It was a tightly structured, almost military-like structure. At the top of the pyramid was Daniel Kinahan, the notorious Irish-born kingpin who had a $5 million reward in the US for information leading to his arrest. Below him were his regional representatives. And in Britain, no one had more power than Kavanagh. He not only orchestrated the big deals, but also distributed the responsibilities. From coordinating the shipping routes, directing the armed groups that protected the goods, to overseeing the money laundering teams that moved millions of pounds through a chain of shell businesses. Each link in the chain was programmed to know exactly what to do. No more, no less. A driver knew the route and the delivery code, but never the final recipient. An accountant in a money laundering chain might handle hundreds of thousands of pounds but never meet the head of the operation. This structure makes police investigations labyrinthine. Every time someone is traced, there is no direct link to the mastermind. But every empire has its cracks. Some cronies, either out of fear for their lives or because they want lighter sentences, began to cooperate with the investigation. It was from their testimony that the police first sketched out the true pattern of the Kinahan gang's operations in Britain. A web of webs, and Kavanagh was the spider in the middle. On a gloomy January afternoon at Heathrow Airport, Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh landed in England after a flight from Dubai, a place he had long considered a safe haven for international criminals. But this time, there was no chauffeur or supercar waiting for him. There were only armed police, handcuffs, and an arrest warrant that had been prepared months in advance.
Right, I'm arresting you on suspicion between November 2016 and October 2017, conspiring to import and supply Class A and B controlled drugs, conspiring to import and supply firearms and ammunition, money laundering that you suspected of converting and transferring criminal property and removing criminal property from England and Wales, knowing or suspecting it represented your own or another person's criminal property.
In that moment, the empire he had built over 2 decades began to crumble. No fuss, no resistance. Kavanagh was taken away like any other suspect. But behind that cold face was a man who had operated a multi-million-pound smuggling operation through violence, manipulation, and absolute silence. At his trial in 2022, prosecutors laid bare the entire drug and arms trafficking network that Kavanagh had run. With hundreds of kilograms of cocaine, 3 semi-automatic guns, and enough ammunition to carry out a small-scale attack, a 21-year prison sentence was inevitable. The bomber, once a symbol of underground power, was now a prisoner with a code name. By 2025, the sentence would not stop at incarceration. The British Supreme Court decided to confiscate all of Kavanagh's assets, from his €1 million mansion in Tamworth, his fleet of expensive supercars, his collection of luxury watches, to his hidden bank accounts. The mask of successful businessman had officially fallen, and in the eyes of the public, Thomas Kavanagh was no longer the elegant man in the perfect suit, but simply a disgraced tycoon, exposed in the light of justice. The case of Thomas "Bomber" Kavanagh has not only brought to an end the criminal career of one of Britain's most dangerous kingpins, but has also exposed the terrifying scale of a transnational smuggling network operating in the heart of modern Europe. A man once thought untouchable, coordinating hundreds of kilograms of drugs and weapons, is now behind bars as a criminal, no longer hiding behind the facade of a polished businessman. But the story is not over. When one link like Kavanagh is taken down, will the others continue to operate quietly? In the underground world, where power is established by violence and silence, a power vacuum never lasts for long. The Kinahan gang is still there, its successors are still in hiding, and the smuggling network has not been completely severed. This is a victory, but not the end. What do you think of the 21-year sentence handed down to bomber Kavanagh? Is it enough of a deterrent or just the tip of the iceberg? Share your thoughts and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and keep discovering the truths that are still hidden in the dark.